Namaskar, hello and welcome viewers. You're watching Perspective with your host Kriti Mishra. At the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is attending the 14th BRICS summit hosted by China in virtual format. This includes a high-level dialogue on global development. And for deeper insights on this 14th BRICS summit, I'm joined by an illustrious panel of guests. So in the studio, we have with us Mr. Suresh K. Goyal, former ambassador. Welcome to Sunset TV, sir. And joining us through virtual platform, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, Foreign Affairs expert, and Mr. Pramit Pal Chaudhary, Foreign Affairs editor, Hindustan. I welcome both of you on Sunset Television and thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Chaulia, as ambassador, is saying that it is best to focus on economy right now. So given the context, the current context, what do you think BRICS summit would bring to the table for India?
I think for India, Kriti, the main thing, like Prime Minister Modi has already outlined in his initial remarks, is that we are looking for post-COVID recovery. We are looking to prevent relapse into another global deep recession. And the signs have not been good since the war began in Ukraine. Now the inflationary pressures, supply chain bottlenecks, fuel and food shortages are causing tremendous pressure. So I think the BRICS countries, through their own internal mechanisms as well as advocacy for developing countries, can help alleviate what the situation, the global economic situation. So definitely our focus on that. Prime Minister also raised the issue of what he called practical steps and measures which need to continue. So these are not earth-shaking ones, but they can cumulatively add up to support the economic recovery. He spoke about the vaccine R&D center and the efforts to improve healthcare in the region. He spoke about the mutual recognition of pharmaceuticals among BRICS countries. And there's a variety of other mechanisms and working groups that we have created over the last 15 years on agriculture and education, youth, women, labor groups. There are all kinds of infrastructure for BRICS institutionalization that have happened. So that work, I think, should continue. There's not going to be very spectacular achievement or takeaway from the BRICS summit, simply because, for the reasons you outlined, Kriti, which is, the Chinese and the Russians are trying to use BRICS as a platform to just go on an attack against the US. And I don't think it's in our interest to tag along on this agenda. And we are therefore trying to get the BRICS to focus on the basics and on the core purpose for which it existed. We want a reform of the multilateral system and order. But I think the whole agenda of Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, for example, is saying that there is a Western push for hegemony and that is causing great threat to world peace and all that. I mean, frankly, right now, it's hard to see how we can agree with all these viewpoints. We have a different threat perception. China, which is sitting with us alongside us in BRICS, is our number one adversary. So we are not going to go along with this kind of effort to politicize the BRICS. Security cooperation, you mentioned, that is good. National security advisors are talking about counter-terrorism, which is a safe subject. I mean, this is something on which all BRICS countries can agree. We are all opposed to jihadist extremism and fundamentalism. And barring Brazil, which doesn't really get affected by it, South Africa also now has a problem in Mozambique next door, where there has been an uprising of Islamists. And of course, India, China, Russia, all three of us face this menace. So those kind of things, practical measures are good. But to expect this grouping, once upon a time, we were hoping that BRICS will be the basis for building a new world order and for all emerging economies to come together and on equitable basis to bring about huge transformation. That is not happening, primarily because of the China factor and to a lesser extent Russia's extreme measures that they have taken in Europe now. So I think we have to be cautious. We are also not in favor of sanctions. To that extent, maybe all BRICS countries can agree that we are not in favor of sanctions as a solution. We are in favor of negotiated settlements to the ongoing war in Europe and such things. But if you add up all of it, I think it's a work in progress, and we'll persist with this institution because each country gets something out of it. Some of our interests are still being served in it. But to expect this to be a vehicle for a new world order, I think that's far-fetched. And China has gone astray completely. And he's got a unilateral agenda and is not really a team player anymore. They are just using this summit, in my view, for grandstanding and to project themselves as still benign, but that's not accepted by us or many other member countries of BRICS themselves. So I think overall, we have to lower expectations and just let this institution carry on without believing it will be a big transformative vehicle or engine anymore.
The other aspect, of course, Dr. Chaulia, that we're talking about is that we're looking at expansion of the BRICS grouping. Now, what are the conditions that New Delhi should enunciate upon for such an expansion? What are the pros and cons for India?
Chinese are the biggest advocates for BRICS Plus. They want more members. And in a way, it has happened with the New Development Bank, which is a kind of a sub-institution of BRICS, their own creation. Bangladesh, Egypt, Uruguay, UAE, these four have been admitted as members along with the 5 BRICS countries. So it's actually 9 now in the New Development Bank. And in fact, that's one of the success stories of BRICS. If you look back, they have managed to give out loans, and for infrastructure and development projects, a number of countries worth over $25 billion. So to that extent, and it's a jointly financed, it's not a Chinese, dominated institution. We have made sure that the design of the New Development Bank is fairer and more democratic. So I think those sort of things do suggest that the other developing countries still hope that these so-called leading emerging economies, which are more advanced, will support the least developed, or the LDCs. So I think there may be room. In fact, the Chinese have invited very large number of heads of government to a high-level dialogue after the main summit is over on June 24th. So what they're trying to show is that we are now forming this big grouping of all the developing countries to oppose Western neocolonialism and hegemony and that kind of thing. But I think it's more, people are smarter now, and expansion ought to be on the basis of regional principle, first of all. We would like, because BRICS is intercontinental. So from every continent, there should be some representation to make it, look like it's not just the leading powers of Asia and of Africa and Latin America or Eurasia, but also middle and small powers from this region. So if they're involved, it's not a bad idea, but only thing we need to look for is cohesion. Already we are speaking about a lot of differences among 5 members. If it becomes 15 or 20, and then, getting consensus and agreements and communiques is going to be hard, not to mention actual real projects and initiatives. Something like New Development Bank could not have been conceived if there were 15 or 20 altogether. Right. We needed a small group of 5. So this plurilateral model is good, and I think we should be very selective in admitting. I think the Chinese are also looking to bring in members who are going to tilt ideologically in their favor against the West. Even the Russians will not mind it, given their current, there are daggers drawn with the West. So I think there, we should look for balance also. I would say balance of foreign policies, mix of countries which are, on all ends of the spectrum. They could be pro-Indian, they could be pro-Chinese, they could be pro-Western, pro-Russian, whatever, but we need a mix of all of them. That way we can ensure that, the Chinese don't team up here also and make life difficult for other countries and corner them, because then it becomes a unilateral vehicle. And if the day that happens, then BRICS is of absolutely no use to us. We have conceived and designed it in such a way it's not a unilateral thing. So I think these are the principles we should look for.
Those are very strong statements that you're making, Dr. Chaulia. Those are very, very strong statements that you're making. But on that note, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Chaudhary, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, and Ambassador Goyal.